Hi, sisters. It's Deborah Morrison here, and I'm talking tonight about our voices in elections because our voices are signified by our vote in elections. And many of us have voted already in this election, and yet some others will be voting tomorrow, or perhaps even tonight, in this most historic election. And I'm coming to us as a We Can Do It woman, as you might imagine, having founded the movement. And I have particular prowess in the financial field, 45 years worth. And I've seen horrific discrimination against women that are equally trained and not receiving the same pay as their male counterparts for the same job. It's completely prevalent. It has been for decades and centuries. And it's not on a par to become equal until I think it's 25 years from now, if we continue at the same snail's pace. Now, I'm not saying life is all about money. No, I'm not. It's about far more than money. And yet, money is such an important tool. It's such an important indicator. It gets tied up with our self-concept and opportunities that we can afford ourselves and our families. And so it's nothing to be trifled with. No, it's not. As women, we are outside the power structure in a patriarchal system. And I know systems is not an everyday term for a lot of Americans, particularly white men who are empowered by a system that they don't even have to think about. I mean, a dear late friend of mine said all a white male has to do to perpetuate sexism is nothing because the system does it for him. I'm not trashing men. I love men. I have a number of men in my own family. There's no sense in thinking I'm trashing men. I'm not. Yet I'm also not trashing women. And I never want to be mistaken on that vein either. I'm suggesting that we, in fact, work towards, as we say in the Pledge of Allegiance, justice for all. And we don't have that now. We don't have that in representation. We don't certainly have that in wages. We don't have that in respect. And there's a horrific cost to all of society, not just women, to the fabric of society, to the families, to the generations, both before us, because if some of our elders are undersaved, we might be called into caregiving in a way that maybe we weren't prepared for mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, and to the kids some of us are raising. Let's talk about representation and people speaking up, using their voice, if you will. And we don't have to go too far back in history to see a very, very perfect example of it in Elvis Presley. Obviously, the king. And in 1970, he was invited to come to the Houston Astrodome to perform. But they said, leave your sweet inspirations, his African-American female backup singers, you leave them at home. And he said, if my girls don't come, I don't come. You can imagine the sweet inspirations came with Elvis and they performed. And Elvis didn't stop there. He arranged for a blonde woman, a young blonde woman, to drive a Jeep around with his sweet inspiration backup black singers in the Jeep, waving to people throughout the streets of Houston so that everyone would see them. Yes, he was proud of them. Yes, he was making a statement. Yes, he was using his voice to say, this matters. You see, he was coming from a position of power, albeit a black man, not as much power as a white man, but he was coming from a position of power, and he used that power on behalf of black women, in this case, that didn't have anywhere near as much power. Let's fast forward. Lilly Ledbetter, whom is kind of top of mind because she just died October 12th at age 86. She was hired at Goodyear Tire and Rubber, worked there for 19 years, was harassed by men that didn't even have the supervisory role and title that she had, hired as a supervisor. One of very few women in the supervisory role. And other male employees taunted her. You're going to be my next woman at Goodyear. Oh, you didn't wear your bra today. She was told to stay home while a sexual discrimination investigation was being conducted. And she said, absolutely not. If he stays on the job, I stay on the job. She knew full well she would be going home with no pay. And in 1998, when she was nearing retirement, she was slipped an unsigned anonymous note stating that her pay as a supervisor was as much as $2,000 a month less than what men were receiving in the same supervisor's job. She sued for sex discrimination in 1999 in Alabama. A jury awarded her more than $3 million. That's in 1999 dollars. $3 million in back pay and damages. But then the decision was reversed on appeal. She pursued her case through to the United States Supreme Court, who also ruled her against her in 2007, saying, and the opinion was written by Justice Alito, Samuel Alito, who said Ms. Ledbetter had waited too long to seek redress in the courts. In the fine print, a narrow interpretation of the law said that she would have had to file her claim within 180 days. That's 6 months of knowing of her of receiving her first unequal paycheck. Remind yourself, this had happened for 19 years. And of course, as we might imagine, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a voice for so many people, not just women, so many people outside the power system. And she vigorously dissented that decision. It was a 5-4 vote, saying there's no way she could understand that unfair pay circumstance within that short time period. And so Congress finally passed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act in 2009. It was the first piece of legislation that President Barack Obama signed, and it eliminated the statute of limitations on fair pay claims. Lilly received zero remuneration for those decades of underpayment. You see, I know the compounding effect of that. When women or minorities are paid less than the white male majority in this case, they receive less money, so they have less expendable or less discretionary income to push into the pension plan, or nowadays the 401k or the 403b plan, which means they have less company match because that's a figment of a percentage on the contribution that the employee makes. So the employer match was less money being reported to Social Security, so her pension from Social Security was far less. And the compounding on that over 20 years, easily $250,000. No, we can't just say, oh, who cares? It's incumbent upon us and the kids that we are raising, particularly the girls, to say, this is not right. This is a system that needs change. And often the people in power aren't so eager to share that power. And so unless people outside the power grid use their voice and sometimes use their voice in concert with other similarly discriminated against groups or individuals, the systems won't change. We need change makers in the United States of America. We need to be as big and great as our citizens have the capacity of being. And that's why I called forth this movement called the We Can Do It Women movement, because I think it's our time to step into our power, to use our voice on behalf of ourselves and our sisters, particularly those with less privilege. I own my privilege. White, upper middle class, born in the United States of America, that's a lot. There are women that would give their eye teeth, their lives for that privilege. And I know that. So I'm using my voice. Now, lest anybody think that I'm a one news horse junkie. No, I'm not. I feel it incumbent upon us to absolutely listen to the issues from a number of different perspectives. And those are often voiced by a number of different groups of people. And yet some of it is going to filter through in the form of news. So on my smartphone right here, you can see I have CNN, Wall Street Journal, Fox, ABC News, USA Today, Bloomberg, BBC, NPR, Public Radio, New York Times, CBS News, Yahoo Finance, C-SPAN Now, and CNBC. I look at these on a daily basis. Yes, I do. Do I read every word? No, I'm looking at the slant. Is someone giving me a different slant that I can factor into my mind, distill what I know, use the intellect which I have been gifted with and which I have honed through education, and make a decision that is good for people that maybe don't have as big of a voice as I do? Yeah, it's a responsibility. I don't hear it so much today, yet I've heard it even as recently as a couple of years ago. I don't get involved in politics. Guess what? You are involved in politics because that's part of life. The joke about the golden rule and they who have the gold make the rules is pretty true. So a lot of people that are dismissive of these systemic injustices will just kind of paintbrush over this and say, oh, Deborah hates men. Nothing could be farther than the truth. I love men. I love the equal treatment, however, of women and men, Black and Hispanic and Indian and other nationalities of women relative to white women. Yes, and we can make this a United States of America. Yes, we can. Yet we're going to have to use our voices to affect that change. I'm a little surprised that we haven't heard from Nikki Haley, who's very smart, in months. And I guess, I mean, just breaking the story a couple days ago that I guess Donald Trump doesn't think he needs her voice. Well, I can't even imagine not wanting the voice of a smart woman, for example. That's one example. But it's that the ability for us to be dismissed, like we're not needed. We seem to be needed to create babies at this point, but we're not respected enough to be paid equal amounts or to actually find factored into the tax code some tax credits to help care for these babies once they're born. It really all does interconnect. Let me bring you up to speed on a more recent example. Robin Williams, who we've dearly loved, and may rest in peace, had a part of his contract. It was a clause in his contract. When he shot a movie, the production company had to hire a minimum of 10 homeless people to work the crew. Did he need to do that? Robin needed to do that. We're grateful he did that. You can bet the 1,500 homeless people were grateful he did that. So let's look beyond our own iris, right? Our own eyeballs. Let's look beyond our own, in some cases, and in my case, certainly privileged little capsules, little encapsulated environments. And let's imagine how great we will be when we lift up those voices. Yes, some of them dissonant. Yes, indeed, which is what comprises a true democracy. This is no time to squelch the voices, particularly of more than half the human race, females. No time. Absolutely no time. So get out and vote if you haven't voted early. And regardless of the outcome of these elections, I want us to continue to use our voice because we have one. And if we don't continue a democracy, we will not have one. Just ask the women in communist countries. So let's use it while we have it. Let's continue to uphold the justice for all and be a prize to opportunities and situations and sisters among us and around us whose voices are very, very small. They've been squashed. And for us to listen them into speech and to co-speak with them. Yes. Band together. We are stronger together, women. Yes, we are. And we can do it, women. We can do it when we intentionalize our actions, when we band together, and it will be better for all of society, men included. I guarantee that. So until next time, we can do it, women. Use your voice as your vote in this election. And afterwards, tapping your representatives, holding them to accountability, pressing them on issues that aren't just for all people, because we all deserve it. Yes, we do. Thank you so much.